Welcome. I'm so happy you decided to join us today. And I'm Dr. Susan, and we are going to have a little bit of time, half hour or so, on play and learn. And today we're going to look at a book, and it's about two different villages of people and how they recognize the difference between the two. But ultimately, when we read the rest of the book, you'll find how they came to recognize how they're very much the same. So we're going to do that story, and then we're going to create a little project that you may want to do with your family, with your mom and your dad and sisters and brothers. So let's get started with the story. The story is called The Circle People. We Are Circle People is the title, and it's by Andrew Newman, and the illustrations are by Alexis Aronson. So let's get started with the story, and then we can get into our little bit of a project for it, all right? Come on, there we go. All right. The story is, we are circle people. There was once a village, a square village, where the square people lived. On market day, the farmers came from square farms to set up square tables in the market square. Everything fit neatly, side by side, and all seemed well. I'm going to mention to you as we go through the story to pay attention to a little bit of the things. Pay attention to their what they're standing in. They all seem to be in this rectangle that goes all the way around each individual. And I'm supposing, when we first look at this, that it's telling us that this is the area in which they live. So even the trees are square, and the plants, the buildings. So, all right, so let's take, and it says, and everything fits very neat, side by side. All right. Then one day a visitor arrived. Now, look at the visitor. He looks very different than the square people, right? So he must have been visiting from another village. So the people seemed a little bit like, wow, he's very different. The visitor was from the circle village, where the circle people lived. When they felt happy, they celebrated in circles. When they felt sad, they comforted each other in circles. Everything happened in circles. And look at their village. Everything is circles. The plants, the flowers, the trees, their buildings, their planters, everything is done in a circle. The visitor liked the square village. It was neater than the circle village. Everything had its place, but the square people didn't seem happy. Now notice the face on the circle visitor to the face on the square villagers. Their hands didn't quite touch. Their hearts didn't quite connect. And they all seemed very lonely. The visitor felt sad. That night, the visitor dreamed of his home. He missed sitting close together with his family and friends, close enough to hold hands and bump knees, close enough to rest heads on shoulders, close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. In the circle village, no one felt lonely. As evening fell on the next day, an unfamiliar song echoed across the square village. The villagers paused and turned to see the visitor standing in the center of the market square. He was singing with his staff lifted high into the sky. Well, you see light beaming from his staff. There was a light in it, and a very beautiful smile on his face. And the square people were a little startled. You can tell by looking at their face. Music seemed to fall like beautiful raindrops, filling the square people with curiosity as they gazed upon the heavens. Isn't that pretty? And again, you see the square people inside of their square, each individual one. As the visitor finished singing, he struck the ground 3 times. Seconds later, the earth rumbled and a large hole appeared. Inside was a long forgotten fire circle filled with dry wood, just waiting to be set on fire. So let's read that part again. Inside was a long forgotten fire circle filled with dry wood, just waiting to be set on fire. That's going to give us a clue about part of the story. With one prayer of hope and one strike of a match, the fire roared to life. As the fire's warmth radiated through the village, the pointed corners of the square people began to round and soften. And just look at the different people. The one that's sitting next to the visitor, their square has all turned into a circle. And they're all beginning to recognize and go, wow, what the difference is. And the smiles on their faces. Smiles appeared, followed by giggles and laughter, until soon the whole square village was singing and dancing and sharing, hand in hand in a circle around the fire. The end. We'll talk a little bit about why that strange event happened. All right? So, as you'll see sitting here on my table, is you see actually a candle holder. And I thought it was very interesting that I have this in my room, in the classroom. And it is a circle, and their arms are all linked together, which I thought was kind of very appropriate to the story, because this is a representation of a circle of people. And you can't see their faces, but they have smiles on their faces, and they're all very much connected to one another. So when it goes to the story, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, but part of the story is talking about a visitor that came from his village, which was very different from the village he visited, the square village. And he liked, as you heard in the story, that he liked how everything neatly fit, everything was in its place, and it was very neat. For the circle where his village wasn't quite as neat. But the thing to remember, that was his village, and that was what he was used to. These people lived in a village that was square, and they recognized that. And then I have a picture of one of the villagers that is in the square. That's the square in which they lived. They couldn't move beyond the square, or what they felt was a border in which they lived. They didn't feel they could move beyond that, which was probably the reason why they couldn't connect and touch and hold hands and hug and things of that nature. They felt that they didn't have that ability. So this is how their village ended up. That's how they ended up with their square village. So the idea when the visitor came to visit was, this doesn't feel right. It didn't feel right to him because that wasn't what he was used to. But he could see and probably recognized that the people seemed lonely. They weren't able to connect with one another. They were all there together, but they didn't communicate with one another. And not being able to communicate and connecting with one another can make you lonely. Even if you're in a crowded room where you didn't know anybody, you'd get that same kind of a feeling that you're okay, but you're not connecting with anyone. So, as we read the story, it talked about that he had this potential within him to show the square people how it could be different if they chose that. They had to choose that. Definitely the circles began to melt, you saw that, but that didn't mean that those people would connect. They'd had to make that decision within themselves whether they should or shouldn't. But from the story you could hear from what he said they were smiling and laughing and singing and sharing together. So this was something that they had inside of them that they didn't even know they had, which was why the fire circle was not there. They had forgotten. They had forgotten who they are and what was truly the center part of who they were. It wasn't gone, it was just forgotten. They just didn't recognize that it was there. So when he lit the fire, all the people recognized, oh, there's that something inside of them that just knew what they needed and what they really and truly wanted, which helped cut the loneliness, which is the purpose of the circles. So what I wanted to do was, because he was attracted to come to that village and share with the people there how it could be different if they chose it to be different. And the other thing I wanted to think about with you is the idea that we draw people to us. We draw our friends to us. We draw different communities and things to who we are, because we recognize something within them. And sometimes we forget what drew them to us is what's inside of us. So my idea was for us to make a circle of friends and family and recognize what drew them to us. What was special about them? You know, sometimes you meet somebody and go, oh yeah, I really like this person. I don't know them well, but I really like them. There's something about them I really like. And the more you get to know that person, you recognize and know that, wow, they like this and they like that and they like this and I like this and I like that. And there's a lot of things you have in common. So you drove those people to you. So what I wanted to do was I cut out some of the visitor, which is this guy. He's the visitor, okay? And then these were some of the village people. I just did 2 of those, the colored ones. And when you saw in the book that they began to change. So I'm going to take this, and part of the story, and I think you saw it, is their corners, as he said, began to soften. So we can take this, scissors, and just soften the corners. Just like that. So that made them, they looked not quite the same, but they looked very familiar now. So there was something that he saw in them that they didn't see inside themselves. Yet, they weren't afraid of the visitor. They weren't afraid to connect with him, talk to him once the circles softened, their squares softened, and they opened up to recognize that they're the same, even though they look different, even though they lived in different villages. That essence of who they are, the love and the heart that's within them, is exactly the same. So one of the things, I'm going to put down some of the things that are the people that I know, and also what I'm thinking some of the visitors saw in some of the other people. I'm going to write it on the back of each of these characters, which is what I said, what you can do if you want to do a project that relates to this story, is to take pictures of your family, maybe your friends, or something that reminds you of them. So I'm going to take with this one, I'm going to turn it face down like that. And it doesn't really matter which one it is, whether it's the visitor with the round face or the visitor with the square. So I'm going to put, he recognized the light. So I'm going to put light inside of them. And this one was, they were aware that they were a little different. So awareness is on this, I put on this one. And this one, if it was some of my friends, I would see that they're friendly. So there's friendly on that one. And this one, you might recognize the kindness. And when we put down words or things that describe another person that we're attracted to, is because they have something within them that you have within you. But sometimes you don't recognize that. And this, by recognizing it within that person, begins to draw it more out in you. So I'm thinking sometimes people are playful. That might draw them to you, the playfulness within them. And sometimes it's their interests, the things that you might be interested in, like soccer or football or riding bicycles or skateboards or any of those things that you enjoy doing, when you meet someone else that you haven't met before and they enjoy doing that, that helps connect. That helps connect you to them because you have something in common that you like to do together. So I'm just going to put sports on this one because that covers a whole lot of territory. And possibly some of the other things that might connect someone else to you is if they have an interest in music or art that you have an interest in. That's going to draw them to you too. And so I'm going to put art and music on this one. And this is just the things about things that they do. There might be other people that draw you to them just simply because they're kind. We said friendly. I think I did a kind already. But we'll do that again because that's very nice to see about a lot of people. Kindness and loving. I'll put loving on this one too. Okay, and loving. So, what do you admire about maybe your brother or your sister? On my brother and sisters, I would put down caring. They're very caring. Even as we're older, we still care for one another. And that draws us to us, even though we're brothers and sisters. And in one family, it can still draw something, there's something special about them that you admire or that you feel and you see about them. So we're going to put that down. And then we have one more. And I think this one, we probably see in a lot of people, and we may not acknowledge it in the very beginning of the relationship with them, but the presence that drew you to them was the fact that you could radiate and feel the love that they have. Okay? So I'm going to put love on this one, which is probably the very first part that tends to draw you to people. All right? So we've got something on each one of these people. And I showed you this character, the one villager that had the square, and how we've changed the shape of their heads because of recognizing that they could connect and stuff. So I'm going to kind of just do that really quickly on most of these because you could see that in the pictures and it created a smile. I'm not going to draw the smile on there. So you can make these round. But you also, I told you about the candle holder that I have here, and it's very beautiful. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to light the candle because the fire was something that awakened all these people in the village, that there was something that connected them. And that fire in the fire pit that came up was one of those things that brought those ideas out, brought that light out of all those individuals. And then their recognitions that they did want to share and they did want to connect and they did want to have a loving relationship with all the people in the village. And now they had an opportunity to connect. I know right now we are limited in our handshakes and our hugs and things like that, except within our families. You can still, even without that physical interaction with someone, you can still have those feelings inside of you. And when you do, and you greet or talk to the person that you have similar feelings about, you guys connect and you feel those feelings, which is really wonderful to be able to do that and to have those people in your life. Because they're there to help and support you just as you're there to help and support them. Because you remember in the first part of the story, he was saying in his village, if people were sad, you could put your hat on someone's shoulder and feel the comfort. And you're unhappy or upset about something, you could have that connection with someone that could help you move through that idea or that feeling that you might be having. So what I did is I created these little stands because I want to create our circle of friends and family. So we're going to see if my stands work. So we're going to go well, nope. So they need assistance, so we're going to give them some assistance. So I'm going to take a little bit of glue to put on the very bottom so that they stand up. There we go. There. Okay, so we're going to put them on the outside, like that. Okay, and we'll do this one too. He might stand all by himself. There we go. And we're going to get these people all the way around, and we're going to remind ourselves of the thing that drew us to them. So this one is caring. So this one has a caring personality that drew the visitor to them. And here's the visitor. And this one, we put love. So he recognized and felt that love within that circle. So there's that one. He's back on this side. I think you can see some of this on the camera over here. And this one was art and music. Maybe that's what originally attracted someone to you. And then the more you got to know them, there was a whole lot more that you discovered about that person or that friend. And that made your connection even deeper. And that's part of, so here's, and this one was the sports. And believe it or not, girls love sports as much as boys do, just in a different way. And that may be part of it. And here's another one. This one we talked about, and we said this one was playful. So there's playfulness in that. And this one is friendly. How many people do you have in your friendships and people that you know at school or maybe in some of the activities that you're involved in that are just super friendly? You just really like them. And they're easy to talk to. And they're easy to relate to in being able to see who they are and how they act and react to things, just as you do. And this one is aware. Many times we have to be aware of how we're feeling and how we're thinking about someone. And one of the greatest practices to try and achieve or to work on developing for yourself is that we don't judge people by the way they look or the way they talk. Because what that does is that cuts off that idea that we could have a relationship with them that would give us so much more in our lives. Okay, this guy, he's going to kind of smush in here. There we go. So we have all these people in the village that has come together to recognize that everybody can connect, everybody can have a relationship with each other, and the relationship can cover so many different things, so many different ways in which we like to do things. And sometimes the relationship is maybe a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or one of the family friends. But the cool part about that is that when they have a relationship with you, they can introduce you to other people that have similar interests that you do. So your circle of family and friends gets larger and larger and larger. And the more we're able to do that, the more we're able to make a difference not only for ourselves first, but our family, and then it draws right back out to the community we live in and the state we live in, because energy just constantly is moving and constantly drawing people to us and also repelling people from us if there's an uncomfortableness about something or someone that just doesn't seem to go away. You just have to kind of figure out why that is. And if you need to talk to your mom and dad about something like that, that's okay too. That's important. Say, I just don't feel comfortable with that person, and try to figure out why. And if you can't, then maybe that's the person you just simply let go out of any relationships you want to have. So we're always at choice, just as these people in the square village, this one here, and the circle people in the circle village, everybody had, I'm going to put them right down here so it reminds you, everybody had the opportunity to make a decision or a choice. They didn't have to step out of their square if they really didn't want to. It's all right. They would find other ways for them to be the connection and things that they wanted. So the visitor didn't come with the intention to say you have to change and you have to be this way. You can't be that way anymore. It's not any good. Makes me sad. I don't want to be sad, so I want you to be this way. Well, that might not make the other person happy or want to be part of that, and everybody is a choice. And to find that love and that light within inside of you that you're able to share with everybody else, just as the candle is glowing, and it creates warmth, and it creates light, and it creates a feeling of comfort and care that is there for everyone. There's nothing stopping it. So we have that option and that opportunity for us, as the story says, that you can, this is possible, this is part of who you are, but you always have a choice as to where you want to step into it, if you do. So this week, see how many places that you can find and many people that you can think of that have things about them that drew you to them or them to you, and how your relationship started and moved into something wonderful. A great friend, a wonderful cousin or relative you've never met before, and all of those different things. So stay open and listen with your heart, and also just be who you are. And that's the biggest thing that draws people to you. Just simply be who you are, and come from a place of love and joy that makes your world different and their world different too. But if you like the book, they're available on Amazon. At least that's where I got my series. And we've had several of Andrew Newman's books. He has, I think, 10 different books. Lots of different titles. We'll read more of his as time goes on. But he's a great author, and his stories always have something important to say. And that's one more way that we can be open to learning. So thank you very much for joining me today. I know that your week is going to be wonderful, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much. Bye.